Finally got some time to slow down a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm happy to do
we all
it.
got some time now.
more than it was much needed at first, and it's still nice, but I'm definitely like at a point now where I've been going to bed at like I'm in bed at like 9:30, 10 every night.
Yeah,
I've been like going to bed so early every night, so I'm very well rested for the first time in a long time. So now I'm like itching to go get some traveling and places. I'm like, yeah, I'm ready, but in all due time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I mean, maybe as a way to get into it, I wanted to ask you about this because you're one of the few people I've talked to who's actually had this experience. You did at least one of those drive-in shows, right?
Yeah, I did one in, it's not technically Charlotte, but it's called Kings Mountain, North Carolina.
It's like outside of Charlotte.
Yeah, it's like 45 minutes outside Charlotte. So I did that.
I mean, walk me through that experience because I'm so curious what it actually felt like to play one of those shows.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, I feel like for a time there, and still, I guess every week or so, the climate surrounding the coronavirus or country, or if you want to break it down to what we do in the music industry and these shows and safety, every week or every couple of weeks, it seems like there's a different tone to what the overall consensus of what's safe or what's not, or what's considered okay and what's not considered okay. So at the time of accepting the drive-in show, like at the very beginning of the pandemic, or not the very beginning, like closer to the beginnings, these ideas started to kind of come out and float around. And I was like, well, only if it's safe. And, was assured it was going to be running with all the safety precautions needed. And so I was like, all right, let's do it. At least I could say I did one in my lifetime, looking back on this. And, the entire experience, I'll break it down. It was so interesting. But it was also really great just to be back on the road with my team and kind of have that one little sense of normalcy for a minute.
Yeah, back with that family, right? Because that's a family we're disconnected from right now.
Yeah, dude. I feel like normally I spend majority of my year with these guys, and it's the first time I'd seen them since probably February, which was pretty wild. But the show was so it was interesting. It was very. I know there's been a lot of mixed reviews and a lot of controversy and a lot of different viewpoints on the drive-in, but my experience, and I can only kind of speak and attest to my experience,
right,
and the people that were at my show, it was extremely safe. We got there, and obviously it's an interesting layout. The stage is not a normal stage, but you look out there and it's a plot of land. It's a massive, beautiful. It's actually in a beautiful area in North Carolina, but it's a plot of land, and you're at this big old drive-in in the middle of nowhere. And when we got there for the show, we had a little green room, or whatever you want to call it, like the manager's office or something. And we're overlooking the entire thing. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is insane. Like hundreds and hundreds of cars, but all within their confined space limit.
Yeah.
And I was like nervous. I was like, all right, our kid's gonna kids tend to break the rules or bend the rules when they follow them until they get into, and they're like, okay, then screw it, we're gonna go your own thing. But what I noticed was everyone was actually like in their areas, like tailgating in their own area. And so we weren't like, the promoters, Disco Johnny, were not allowed to drive us to the stage. We had to walk to the stage, which was totally cool. I got to kind of see it all, but I walked through these cars and I see everyone like in their own spot, hanging out with like a small group of people. Everyone had their mask on, which I was nervous. I was like, okay, please, I don't want this to be one of those things where everyone's not wearing their mask and everyone's like raging. And I'm like, oh, please, please, please. So everyone I saw from my walk over and from the stage wearing their masks, staying in their spots. Surprisingly, a lot of people were staying in their cars with all the doors shut, listening to the music and like raging. And I'm like, all right, that's interesting. That's kind of like.
So was it on like an FM station people tuned to?
So this was one of those ones where it was an AM radio station you tune into, classic drive-in situation. And what was kind of interesting about the layout was, so we had a stage, and it's a smaller stage. It wasn't a big festival stage or anything like that. But what was cool was right next, like to the right of me, was the wall, like the movie projector. Like, this thing is like 100 feet tall. this thing is the biggest movie screen I've ever seen in my life. And they had a live streaming camera angle, a couple different angles of me DJing from the booth, cameras hooked up that were projecting, like live casting off the big screen. And they had that mixed in with, I brought my VJ. And so he was able to display my content on this really cool, large movie screen mixed in with my live cam feed. And it was really cool. It was like, I've never seen anything like that for a show, like a screen that large. And that was pretty interesting. And, you know, the show itself, it's weird because I had my own booth monitors. And so they were like festival style monitors. So it was loud for me.
Right.
Sounded like a normal show for me. And then you turn the booth monitors down and it's like, it's damn near silent out there because everyone has to play their music. You hear the music, it's loud, but it's like this weird.
Well, it's almost like playing like a silent disco or something, right?
Yeah. And then you kind of hear the music hitting from the front cars, and then you hear people screaming, having fun, and you're like, this is just, it's not the same. It's definitely not the same as a normal show. The energy is, it's as people try to make it as good as they can make it because everyone tries to stay in their little cliques, their areas, so they're not breaking the rules. So you don't get that that sense of like that festival sense or that show setting sense where like the crowd is like one unit and it's kind of one energy and everything is in unison. It's a bit more broken up and disconnected in that way, but not in a bad way, just in a new way.
Yeah. I mean, for you as a performer, did you feel like you were able to either to connect with the crowd or even just for yourself to kind of get in your own zone and perform? I'm sure it didn't feel like a regular performance, but did you kind of get that vibe or did it feel like something different?
No, it definitely, like, everyone that was there that made it feel like a real, like going to play a show or a festival all the way leading up to actually playing. And like, for me, it was probably the first time I had DJ'd since my live stream. I did a live stream back in beginning of April. And then before that, the last time I DJ'd was EDC Mexico in February. And so I don't typically like live stream very often or DJ in my free time. It's usually been making music and relaxing and trying to disconnect for a little bit in this downtime. So I was excited to play. I treated it like any other festival. I was like stoked to go play. And you only get to really, like, the way the lighting's set up, you get to see the first few row of cars nonstop and you see those people. And so you're playing to them, but there's a massive like distance of disconnect between you and the front row. They're not like right up in front of you. There's no rail, right? Like no one's on the rail. And so you're like, okay, so let's just feel it out. But it was really cool. And then I didn't even know how many people were there until you start to see lights kind of flicker in the back. You're like, oh my God, there's so many cars in the back that I didn't know were there.
Were people honking their horns? Anything?
No, I was actually thought that was going to be a thing, but it wasn't. Yeah. I had a mic. My mic was tuned into the radio station too. So I could have said that on my, I didn't even think to do that, but no one was honking. No one had their cars on really. Yeah. Everyone turned their cars off, maybe used their battery at the most for the actual for the radio. But
it's no probably one had better, man. Once you put that idea into people's heads, I don't think you'd be able to stop them.
It would have been a whole thing. Yeah, there was no honking, which was actually kind of surprising. But I mean, all in all, I had a really good experience. Everyone was extremely safe and extremely mature about the circumstances, from my team to the promoters to the fans that I saw. Man. But will I do a bunch of them? Probably not. I wanted to do one. I really do though. Really want to use this time to. I'm always writing, but I finally get to sit down and write with no time constraint or limit. Like, okay, I can write, but then I got to leave. I can write and then I got to leave. But now I can just write and then take some time off and write. Yeah. Take some time off and write, and then I can disconnect and be with my girlfriend. And we actually got a dog during quarantine, so I can spend some time with my new dog.
I saw some pictures, man. That's a cute dog.
Yeah, his name is Beef. He's a little English bulldog, and he's a lot of fun and a lot to handle. But like, I would have never. It wasn't even on my radar. I was like, I have no time to get a dog prior to this whole pandemic. I'm like, I'm never home. I would feel bad getting a dog and then leaving it on my girlfriend or leaving it on a pet sitter or friends, and I felt like I would never have a connection with the animal. And so I was like, I don't know when I'm going to get to have an animal, which was a really big bummer for me because I'm a massive fan of dogs and animals in general. And I love animals and I've always had them growing up. So I'm just like,
yeah, same.
And then this opportunity came, but I'm like, well, there's going to be no better time in our young adult lifetime than right now to pull the trigger and make this commitment. And so we've had them for about 4 months now, and it's been incredible. And so when we do get to start playing shows again, whenever that may be, we'll have already had that relationship and that bond. And so I won't feel guilty leaving. So there's been a lot of really good things that have come out of this whole kind of shitty situation.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And I think, trying to find those silver linings is something I've been talking to a lot of people about. And, it makes me wonder, both talking about, switching up the speed of life, getting a dog, moving into a new place, doing these, kind of more normal person activities. And then also thinking about writing music in this time. Like, do you think when things go back to normal, whenever that's going to be, do you think your approach will change as a result of this time? Like either, your result, either your intentions in writing music, like is something about your songwriting changing right now? Or just in terms of life, will you approach, life on the road, getting back into the routine of things differently?
Yeah, there's definitely some, to answer your first question on the music side of things, I think I've started to at the beginning of quarantine, and knowing that I was going to have an extensive time off of touring, I was still in that kind of not burnt out, but kind of exhausted mindset because I had traveled a bunch prior to it and didn't really stop last year. And so
I feel like you never stop, man. I think of you as just constantly on the road.
Yeah. And that's what it's been like for the past 3.5, 4 years now. And so when this all first happened, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the next 2 weeks. It was a lot. It was a lot to kind of process at the beginning. I was about to embark on my second headline bus tour, and literally the week that coronavirus started to really kind of hit home to us, me and my team had to make. The tour was already on sale.
Yeah.
I was probably 2 weeks out from the first date of shows, and we had to pull the trigger and cancel the entire tour before before a lot of these kind of deposits on all this production came kind of final. We got really lucky on that end financially, but it was the first few weeks were really tough for me because it was kind of like, I don't want to say it's the feeling you have when you lose and someone passes or something, but it was such an abrupt kind of shock. Yeah. I was kind of in shock for the first couple of weeks. It didn't feel real. And I don't think I think a lot of us didn't know the severity of the situation.
Oh yeah.
When things first happened, it was kind of like, you see Ultra get canceled and you see things happen. You're like, well, it's okay. Well, I was a believer. I was like, we'll be back by August. We'll be back.
Course.
I'm like, we'll be back in the fall. We'll figure this out. And so at the beginning, I was like, I'll take some time off, take a break from writing for a few weeks. And because I also needed to kind of process all these things that I had kind of built towards just kind of vanishing. So I took some time off from writing to really kind of just relax and because me and my friends were all just like, what is happening? I'm sure you're the same, but what is going on right now?
Oh yeah.
And so I just was super glued to the news, super glued to my phone in the sense of current events of what was going on. I wanted to be aware of what the hell was happening. And so,
yeah, because especially then, it's still true now to a certain extent, but especially then, it was there was news every hour, something new to learn. Everything was changing so fast. And
so, so for me, I was like, I can't write music right now in the first few weeks of this whole thing. I was like, I have to, my head is everywhere. But then when it finally started to kind of settle in that, this was going to be a bit more, not permanent, but we're in it for the long haul. I was like, well, listen, I don't really feel motivated to write dance music or electronic bass music and mixed with whatever. I don't feel very motivated for that. So for the first 2 weeks of writing within quarantine, I started writing a bunch of alternative rock instrumentals, songs mixed with a little bit of hip hop that I kind of tried to take the approach of I'm just a producer now. I'm not a DJ. I'm not going to be playing these. I want to write from a different perspective, write for an artist of some other caliber or other style and just be a producer for a couple of weeks. So for the first 2 weeks, I wrote I think 8 different instrumentals to songs that would not be songs that I would play in a live setting like my sets, but I have something that I'd like to hear on the radio or hear in different types of listening settings. So I spent the first 2 weeks really just kind of honing in on that because I never had time to get into those types of sessions when I was traveling so much. So I never really felt motivated to write music for that setting. I was always writing music for Kayzo and myself, what I wanted to do for that side of things and for the fans that came to my shows and the fans that listened to just Kayzo and Kayzo only. So I was always kind of just stubborn to the idea of actually branching out and writing from a different perspective as not just as the sole artist of a song.
And it's tough I mean, it's tough to take that time for yourself, right? Because, you know, it's like you had tickets to sell, right? Like your tour is about to start. So I feel like there's always, you know, this next thing, this next intention when you're writing songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we had music that was coming out while the tour, it came out regardless, but music that was centered around different artists that I had collabed with that were on my bus tour and things like that. I'm like, all right, well, all that's out the window right now. I don't need to release anything specifically for any show setting right now. And I also have never had the opportunity to kind of sit down and take time to write from a different lens. And so I was like, I just want to do this. And I got super hooked on it. Like I wrote like 3 songs a day.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like super hooked on it. And I was like, this is so much fun. It was a very refreshing kind of way to jumpstart writing in this quarantine, because I think if I would have continued to just kind of stay course to what I've always done or what I intended to do this year for Kayzo as a touring artist, it would have been really hard to do that and get into that headspace. And so I think by me stepping out of that zone for a few weeks, I was very excited and motivated. The endorphins were running, like the creative endorphins were running really high. So after I started writing a bunch of those records, I got back into writing more Kayzo-centric, like rock, electronic dance songs that I would end up playing out. And I had already had a bunch of unreleased music that I went back and kind of revisited that I had plans to release like now or throughout the year, that I could take more time to like maybe go look back and kind of revisit. Because I also, since this entire quarantine has started, I've taken a step back on my writing and my mixing and my mastering approach and tried to learn some new techniques that I maybe wouldn't have had time to learn while touring so much. It's so hard to like, you know, when I'm touring on the road, I don't like writing music on the road because I'm just constantly kind of either jet lagged or tired or want to kind of enjoy where I'm at. So I spend all my time writing when I'm in LA or when I'm in a studio setting. And so I haven't had as much time to try new ways of doing things for a while now. And so this time has been also a lot of experimentation on those 3 different writing, mixing, mastering, all the different levels of writing music. And so I've learned a lot of things that I'm happy I've learned. So I went and kind of applied those techniques to all of this music that I had compiled for this year. And so that was really big, actually a really big blessing, honestly. And all of that kind of got me really motivated to kind of be where I am at today, with what the music I'm writing right now, for end of this year, going into next year and so on. So musically, I am super motivated.
That's great to hear.
Man. I've been able to collaborate with artists that I wouldn't have had time to collaborate with, because there's so many times that I'll DM an artist will DM me, or I'll DM an artist, or we'll be at a festival, like, let's write a song together. And yeah, let's do it. I'll hit you up next week. And then you know how that goes. Like you keep touring and that gets pushed back like a year. And then now it's finally like all of us are kind of like, okay, well, let's do it now. We got nowhere to be. So I've been able to write with a lot of people that I've wanted to write with, that I hadn't had a chance to write with.
That's great, man. And I know, you know, you've got music coming out. You got an EP coming out. By the time this drops, it probably will be out. And are the songs on that EP kind of a product of everything you've just been talking about? Oh my
God, 100%. So outside of the one that I just released called Say It, funny thing about that, I actually wrote that. I don't know what it is, but before I kind of started to tour a bunch. And like when Kayzo first started to become like an artist that like wasn't touring a bunch, but I had like a notoriety on SoundCloud back in we're talking like 2013, 14, a little bit of 15. I didn't have a studio. I had headphones. I didn't have the money for a really good monitor. So I would go, for some reason for me, I loved to write in coffee shops back then. It was just the camaraderie of like seeing people working and having coffee and that kind of environment. I was very motivated to write back then in that setting. And so some of my older songs that really were really popular to my fans, even so this day, I wrote in coffee shops, which is funny enough, in my headphones.
Cool. Yeah, I like that.
And so my girlfriend Shani had a meeting at Soho House in LA, like a few months ago, and this was right when things, you were able to go inside places again and like go in and distance and like sit down and eat or so. She had a meeting and I was like, I'll go to Soho and I'll just work on my computer and grab like a glass of wine or something. There was no one in there. I had like an hour to 2 hours to kill. And I brought my computer, and it's probably the first time I sat down in like a setting, like a coffee or like a setting like that and wrote music in a very long time. And I ended up writing probably 75% of the song that I released today in that 2 hours. And it was like, sometimes in that setting, when I'm like out in a public setting like that, I get super motivated and super inspired because I see people working, I see people moving, like the life is kind of moving out within a building. And I just start writing really quickly and really energetically, and it just kind of comes out. And so that's how that song that released today actually came out. That majority of that writing was in like a public setting like that. But,
I love that. That must have felt good too, man, to sort of be able to be out again and to be in, know.
Dude, it was unreal. Cause I mean, it was great. Cause I haven't had a chance to write like my typical, like I'm rebuilding my stuff has been in storage for the past 6 months. Yeah. And so I'm finally getting back to having like my big studio space, like with my proper equipment. So I'm super excited. But the past 6 months have been really kind of humbling and inspiring at the same time, because it kind of brought me back to the feeling of my grind of when I first started making music for Kayzo, when I was at the coffee shop in my headphones and just writing on my laptop in a chair. I've been doing that for like 6 months, the entire quarantine. And it's been, sometimes that works and it's been working. But to answer your second point, all just like kind of revisiting and learning, all of the other songs on the EP were songs that I had started with, whether on my own or collaborations. I started like last year, and I thought I played at festivals last year. Thought they were done. These are good. Mixes are good. The song ideas are good. And then, there were songs that I were going to drop during the tour, and I held off on because I was like, well, these are bigger songs. I want to wait. And so quarantine thing is kind of messing up. So let me just sit on these for a while. And I'm so glad I did, because I went and revisited all of the other songs, because the other 4 songs were made prior to quarantine. So I went back and remixed, remastered, reworked all of the ideas these past 6 months. So now the songs that are coming out on this EP, I'm like, I'm so proud of them now. Yeah, I loved them then, but I'm so happy I went back and had the time to revisit and rework and really kind of make sure these are what I want.
Because you never get that, man.
No, normally it's like I got a deadline or I'm on the road. And it's like, okay, I have to finish this now because I'm going to be gone for a month touring. So it's now or never type of situations. But now it's like, I can let things kind of breathe. Yeah. And I can revisit them and clear my head and come back to music.
And we all know the feeling of hearing something you put out a year or two before and being like, man, that one part, that one
I could have,
yeah.
I could have worked on that maybe if I had an extra week, or if I was home,
right?
If I had a little less, if I had a little less obligations going on. But now it's like I got all the time in the world, so I'm just really grateful for this time to really take pride in my craft and like every little detail with no stress, no time limit, and nothing. So,
yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, and it's interesting to talk about songwriting, because I think over time, I feel like you've really, I'm not going to say found your sound, because I think your sound is kind of changing and evolving all the time. But I think you've managed to figure out a way that a lot of people haven't, of sort of meshing sounds together, pulling influences from different places. I mean, obviously right now, I think a lot of people associate you with, the combination of electronic music and rock music or punk music, whatever you want to call it. But, if you look at your songwriting process sort of then and now, what do you see as the changes? Like, how did that evolve? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but now I feel like you maybe have it down to more of a science, and you sort of know what to do when you get into a session.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the idea of, so I grew quick backstory. I grew up on pop punk, rock music and all sorts of emo music back prior to electronic music. The only reason I even got into electronic music was my sophomore year of high school. So I moved away from home my freshman year for hockey, lived in 4 different states, 4 different high schools, and played with a bunch of kids from all around the world.
Wait, at what age?
At 14.
At 14. That's
so
crazy,
I left.
Man.
Yeah, so I left Texas then. I moved to Salt Lake City for a team compiled of kids from Sweden, Finland, Norway, and other states. And that was my first time really interacting with people from other countries at a more extensive level. And I always grew up on like pop punk, rock, hip hop, Southern hip hop, things of that nature. And these guys came in and we had an iPod and a system in the locker room, and we'd all different take turns of what we wanted to listen to. And they started to play different types of like electronic music, more kind of Euro ravey music. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, what is this? I know it, but I don't really know it. And they kind of just like played it so often that I kind of got hooked on it. And that's where I started to explore dance music. And that's how I found bass music and dubstep and all of those types of things. And so that's how like the first seed was planted from like, I always listened to this, and this is what I loved. And this is my kind of new love of dance music. And then fast forward to like 2000 and I think it's 16, maybe end of 15. And I'm driving home one day and I'm like, at that point, all I'm making is electronic music, straight electronic music, ravey electronic music, whatever it is, dubstep, getting like there's some like bigger and stuff at that trap.
Starting to get a little buzz. People know your music online.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm driving home, I'm so uninspired because at that time I'm listening to a ton of dance music in my free time to study, to get inspiration, to listen to the guys that I look up to. And I'm just like really not inspired to like listen to this right now. And I'm not, I don't want to listen to this right now. I listen to so much dance music since I moved to LA in 2012 to learn how to make music. I'm like, I got to turn something on that's different. And so I go back to like my old iTunes playlists as I see all this old Bring Me the Horizon, Underoath, Sum 41, and different bands like that. And I just start playing that. And I'm like, I got to listen to all my old stuff like growing up. And it's just like this weird, now that I started to kind of understand music at a different level, like from a different lens versus just being a fan, I'm like, start to listen to all these arrangements and these songwriting and these vocal melodies and these harmonies. I'm like, this sounds like this would go so well with dance music. Yeah. Like they sound like they're written in the same kind of, under the same kind of lens and umbrella. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I try to put like rock vocals on dance songs and maybe even add some guitar mixed with electronic synths and see what that sounds like? What could that end up being? Those are like what I love. I don't just love dance music. I love this too. I don't know anyone on my radar at the time doing that. I'm sure there are people still doing that to a certain extent. I just hadn't found it, and I hadn't found it in the way that my head started to kind of hear it. So like, let me just start trying this out. And at that time, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even understand the complexity of writing rock music and how complex that mixing is, and those layers, the layers of writing.
Did you play any instruments?
So I played a little bit of drums growing up, but I never played guitar growing up. So for me to learn the complexity of like how bass lines and like bass, how like to actually like write guitar and write that type of music, like, and how to fill the frequency spectrum and mix all of that down with bass and guitar and in different sense. It was like, it's been up until, I'm not even kidding you, up until now, I'm still learning, and I'm still finally starting to kind of click the relationship of how rock music is written, mixed, and mastered to dance music. It's very different in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Of how the two type genres are written. And so from then till now, and all of the different sessions I've had with different really big bands and times I've had able to sit down and mix and master with different engineers and producers that write rock music, I've learned so much in terms of how to continue to combine these two in an effortless way. Because it's not like I never wanted to like, and I still never want to just like write a dance song and then slap a rock vocal on top. That was never kind of the idea.
Which, side note, is what a lot of people still do to this day.
Which is fine if that's what you're into. I'm never going to knock it. There's great songs like that, but I really find joy in writing a song that there's such an effortless, interconnected style of electronic and rock that like the listener, even if they're a fan of me or a fan of even the band I'm working with, or like I show up on a rock playlist or something in this, they don't know what this sound is. I don't want them to be like, this is just a dubstep song with rock vocals, or this is like a rock song with some dubstep fills and like some different bass fills and a bass line. I'm like, I want it to be to where like you have like a hard time understanding like where this fits. I don't want it to fit into like a dance playlist on Spotify. I don't want it to fit in I want it to be like, this can be kind of anything. I don't know what this is. And so that's been kind of the that's been the journey, and the fun part of it all is finding ways to continue to blend it so subtly that I don't want it to ever be so blatant. I don't want it to have to hold the card up. Here's the dance part, and here comes the rock influence. Or like sometimes you hear collaborations with different dance artists, and they're not. Sometimes they pass stems around, and you can blatantly hear like, oh well, this guy did this part, this guy did this part. So for me, I'm always very involved when it comes to any sort of writing that I do with bands, whether it's drum recording, guitar recording, or vocal writing sessions. I'm there. I'm there recording with the engineer because the one thing I just absolutely find no joy doing, and I don't have any problem saying this, is I hate vocal comping. I hate vocal comping sessions.
Yeah.
I don't use Pro Tools, so I would much rather work with an engineer that actually comps vocals properly and helps. But I'm there writing and helping engineer the session.
Well,
but I love doing that.
What people don't even realize, man, that just the engineering of vocals. I mean, that's somebody's job. Like
that's like someone does that. Yeah. And so I have a lot of. I always try to be a part of all of those sessions so I can, because I feel like if I'm not, here's the thing: when I've learned from writing with bands, if you're not in the room with the band, like really either taking charge or like. Or letting them know. So here's a good way of putting it. So anytime I get in a session with a band or a singer from a band or whatever, usually for the first hour, before we even get into writing or even warming up, and we just talk about our influences in music. So I think a lot of guys in the band world have a preconceived notion of DJs as like this stigma of like whatever, the DJ stigma is. Like, it's not, you don't play a real instrument, you don't or you just plus play, whatever, like the composite stigma is of DJs.
Right.
I think that sometimes bleeds over into other artists of different music that maybe don't understand electronic music from the way we do. So I really find it really important to like kind of break down my influences and where I come from musically. So when I get into a session with these guys, they can trust me. So when I take charge and I tell them what to do and how that should be done or what I think is right, they like respect my opinions and my decisions. Because a lot of times if you don't do that, with bands or people of different writing styles, they'll just continue to stick to their ways of writing, the way they do things in their own songs. And that's great. But that's when you start to see the line drawn in the sand when you're collaborating. You start to see like, there's their part and then here's his part. And that to me is not a collaboration. So I like to let these guys know, like, this is what I grew up listening to. I grew up listening to you guys. Like, it's a band that I know the ins and outs of your music, and I know all of the details. I'm not just this guy who like sees this as an opportunity or something like to monetize off of. Like, this is what I grew up on. This is what I love.
You got to make them feel safe, right?
Dude, yeah, 100%. And so over the years, that's what's helped me go from, at the beginning of experimenting with vocals on electronic music with a little bit of guitar and maybe some real live drums, to like going into full sessions with bands like Atreyu or Underoath, Bless the Fall, or whatever it may be, and like Papa Roach, and like actually like telling the lead singer Jacoby how we're gonna do this, or
that's crazy.
The drummer of Atreyu would be like, I want you to do this, and they're like, yeah, that's sick, I love that. And that's how we've been able to make these collaborations kind of blur the line of like, is this rock or is this electronic? What is this?
Was it nerve-wracking for you at the start to sort of let them into your process? Because I think, so much of electronic music production, especially for the kind of music we make, is experimentation, and everyone's process is a little different. And it's not necessarily something where everybody does it the same way, or you can just immediately look at somebody's session and see what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so to translate that, I have to feel like that must have been a really weird experience.
Yeah, I mean, like that, I was super nervous my first few sessions with really big bands, especially with multiple guys. We're not talking about just the singer. We're bringing in like, when I did like the session with Mike, and then we had Tino, the drummer, and then Aaron, one of the lead singers. And then with our last night, we had the lead singers and the guitar players. So like having guys that do different things, and they come see me, and I'm like, hey, I write the drums, I do everything on my music. And they're like, you're like, some guys get it and have like, some guys already, like a lot of the guys that I've worked with already have like a love for electronic music in ways that I didn't even know. And they actually produce on the side. Like, the guys from Bad Omens, Noah, he actually produces a lot on his own.
Oh, that's cool.
Like kind of electronic stuff. And he understood it, like what I was like kind of respected, understood what it was inside the box, like an Ableton or Logic. But I definitely I've gone into sessions. I felt very nervous. Like, well, they're going to think I like know nothing, because like, although I don't play traditional guitar and I don't play traditional drums, like I do understand music theory from a producer's standpoint. And I do understand chord progressions in different major and minor scales. And I know how to write music from my way of writing. And sometimes that's very hard to explain to someone from the band world, because we, like you said, we experiment so much. Sometimes we have no idea what we're even doing.
Yeah.
We're like, I have no idea why that works.
Yeah.
And I'll try to explain it to you, but it's not the same as like telling someone why or how to play a chord on a guitar or why this kick snare pattern on a real drum set works. It's like, you can see it. It's right there. You can see it and you can feel it. It's physical. Sometimes it's really hard. At the beginning, I felt very nervous to be like, well, it's all on my computer right here. But you know, like I said, it's all about gaining their, respect in the sessions, letting them know that you're here for real and you're here for the right reason. So that's why I always like to take whatever amount of time it is before the session even starts to really get down with these guys on a personal level. Cause I'm proud to call these guys my friends now. Like, they're not just guys I just was planted into a session with, like, let's write music. And like, then I'll maybe talk to you and see you maybe once a year. I genuinely want to like become friends with these guys and like be a part of their world.
Yeah. And I'm sure at this point you have that reputation, right? Like, word spreads and people see that, this is sort of a different kind of collaboration. Like, while you've been talking, I've been trying to think about, because even before we started talking, I was trying to think about what sets your music apart for me. And I think what I'm realizing hearing you talk is that it's not just that you had these influences and you combined them in a way that people hadn't done before. I think it's that what I'm hearing is that in the process of getting deeper and deeper and connecting with these people who make music you love and combining these sounds, what I'm hearing is that it actually changed your process, and you were very open to sort of letting your music change and not being tied to some idea of what it had to be.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, I think even since I didn't even know, because this is how bad I am with keeping up with time. My second album, Unleashed, came out a year ago, I think today.
Yeah.
And everyone hit me up on Twitter and they're like, I'm like, oh, it's the 1 year? Thank you. Because that album came out, like this is how different it is now. That album came out, I was in Istanbul. The day that I was touring in Europe like a month, almost 2 months. And I like so busy. The album's coming out. I don't even know what day it is. Right. But now it's like, I'm just at home and it's like, I can't believe that the time has gone by that fast. But like my writing process then from now, like I said, I've kind of I go through these waves of like I think I'm going through right now is like, when I'm touring, I learn a bunch and then I retain that writing style and I retain those ways of working, those plugins or whatever, those things I like. And I'll use that so often because it's like kind of, it's effortless. It's mindless. It's almost mechanical. Like while I'm on the road and I'm touring a bunch, but then, that sometimes becomes kind of a downfall because you get stuck writing in the same writing process. And for me now, having this time off, I think I'm going through another one of those like kind of experimental phases. Like I've been able to finally get back into sessions with different guys the past few weeks. And like, I've done a lot of experimenting and learning with how to write and how to mix down guitars better and drum processing and things on the rock side,
right?
To make those sounds fit better within electronic music, because it's just, that was the biggest learning curve, was like getting guitars and bass guitars to like just sit pretty in a mix with like sub bass or different synths, and getting that to actually all sound like it fits together,
right?
And then getting live drums to fit with that too, because they don't hit the same as like a big dubstep kick and a big snare.
Yeah,
it doesn't. And so it's like, dude, it's been one of the most rewarding processes though, to finally, like, all the music I'm putting out, all these kind of like, I've been writing a lot of like kind of like metal guitar breakdowns in the middle of my dance tracks now too.
Oh, nice.
And so it's been very gratifying to have those breakdowns and those rock parts hit and feel as big as like a quote unquote drop of like that. Cause previously it was like, this just doesn't sound right. Like this doesn't have the the fullness of like my dance stuff. Like, what am I doing wrong? And the last 6 months have been a complete learning curve for me understanding how rock is mixed and written. Versus like, so I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to pretend I'm a rock producer, a rock writer, a rock artist, just straight rock, and learn how to write more rock music. So when I do combine it, it makes sense. Because it doesn't sound detached.
Yeah, of course. Because I mean, there's such a big difference, and I think people forget this sometimes, between having a crazy idea or having a new idea, but then it's a totally different skill set to make that idea sound good. You know, it's two totally separate things, and you kind of have to have a little of both to really make it work. Like we were talking about your earlier days when you were sort of getting bigger on SoundCloud and starting to release with labels. And I think the first song, not the first song I heard of yours, but the first one I really latched onto was that song you did called Hassle House.
Oh,
you remember that?
Yeah, I do. That was like 2014 or 15.
Yeah, probably right in there.
Yeah.
And I just listened to it again yesterday because I had kind of forgotten about it. And it was still like, but what I liked about it was still a really interesting idea. It was still like some weird sounds I hadn't heard before, arranged in an interesting way. But then, there's like all of us had 5 years ago, it's like, we're probably better at mixing and producing at this point. So it's interesting to me to see those tendencies, because looking back, I was like, oh yeah, he kind of had those weird ideas the whole time, and it's just been sort of a refinement process of getting it to where.
You know what's crazy about that is what I kind of went through like anytime I go through like I don't like to call them like downturns or like creative lulls. Like there's times where we get writer's block. I don't like to call them writer's block.
Yeah.
But like, I think more now, the older you get and the more you've been in this industry as a writer, and the more especially when you're doing it from the writing and the touring side, I think it starts to kind of hinder subconsciously. I've noticed like it starts to hinder your like sometimes you're willing to take risks becomes smaller and smaller the bigger and the older you get. And what I realize, sometimes I listen back to some of my oldest stuff that's like, it's not great music, but it's not mixed at all well.
Right.
But I listen to some of the things I was doing then, and I'm like, that is crazy. I don't even remember how I did that. And like, I look back and I'm like, that was so like innocent, like just trial and error, putting it out there, not knowing what I was doing and being like, I just think this sounds good. And I think sometimes we lose that as artists that are at a certain point in their career. They're like, well, there's a lot more pressure. There's a lot more to live up to, I think, for a lot of people. And they start to they lose that side of themselves. So I always I definitely recommend for any artist that's at a point in their career and they feel like they're either locked down in a certain sound or a style or a way of doing things, like go listen to music you did like 5+ years ago. Cause you'll like, I've been re-inspired. Even at that point.
Man. It's a crazy feeling because you almost feel like you're listening to music a stranger made,
It's exactly. I'm like, did I make that? Yeah. I'm like, I remember making it. I'm like, that was so long ago.
And
but like, dang,
for me,
cool.
sometimes it can be frustrating even where it's like, man, I was so free. Like I had these crazy ideas, and you don't always feel that way.
Yeah. So I think this has been like to kind of always circle back to this weird time we're in. I think it's been on the creative side. I think everyone's in a different place. Everyone's kind of dealing with this differently, and I don't want to make it sound like it's all perfect and everything's been great. I'm on this creative exploration because there's been a lot of hard times for me, especially like during this downtime. I think everyone's going through not everyone's got to really worry about their work on their mental health, their physical health. I will say this is the first time in the last X amount of years I've been able to work out every single day for like hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be. And like, I'm probably in better shape now than I was touring and everything, because I've been able to finally take care of myself on a different level. I mean, I've always eaten healthy, tried to be healthy, but like actually getting time to like be well rested. Like I finally don't have bags under my eyes for the first time in like 3-4 years. So like, my girlfriend was like, you have no bags under your eyes. Like you look, and I look back at photos of even like of myself in like February, and I'm like, dude, I look like 5 to almost 10 years older in my eyes just from all the touring. And I'm like, and it's not from like partying and staying up late. It's just like that just like being on the road and like
I mean, it's
always traveling
as
does that
not
to you.
Sleeping, like, you know, I medical science tells us that getting enough sleep is like one of the most important things to our health, right? Yeah. And we all just kind of pretend that's not true.
Yeah, so I think every DJ is going to be able to go for like 6 months straight after this. We'll all be able to stay up on. Yeah, but it's been you know, like, and then mentally, everyone's going through mental ups and downs during this time. And
do you have trouble relaxing? Was that a thing?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It definitely was. Like I definitely like while I was like last year and like when we were touring a lot, I definitely had hard times coming down from it, right? Yeah. Like actually unwinding at home. Because I always feel like I didn't write when I was on the road because I didn't like to write on the road because I was always tired and always wanted to worry about. And I have like sometimes I'm playing 2-3 sets a day in some countries. I'm like, what am I going to write? I'm exhausted. Yeah. Like, you know, and all these different countries and things. So I'm like, I go home and I feel the pressure to write nonstop and always write music, but I'm already tired from the road. So now I'm home and I'm tired and I'm writing and I'm on this shitty sleep schedule depending on the time of the year.
Yeah.
And then I have the pressure of like going out and being a human and hanging out with my girlfriend, like doing real world things, like going to the movies or just relaxing, even just like laying at home and doing nothing.
Right.
And I think for me, for us to have like 6 months of like staying at home and doing nothing outside of writing, I finally have kind of trusted myself. It's kind of like on like a tightrope wire. Like I finally trust myself to relax. I know that I can go a week, relax and not write music and life is going to be okay.
Right.
I used to have this really big issue with like taking any more than a day off or 2 days off because I felt like my career was going to like end, like not end, but like I'd be behind.
Yeah.
I'd be behind. And I think that's just a testament to like my work ethic going back to my hockey days. I've always been like the hardest worker. Like I left home at an early age. I spent all my time away from home, like playing hockey.
Yeah. I mean, can we talk about that for a second? Because that was really interesting to me. You know, how did you, so obviously you're playing hockey from a young age. You get to a point where I assume you must have been pretty good to be able to like even have the opportunity to go leave at 14. And I mean, what is that? Were you looking at it as like a career path or as a life at that point?
So I learned to skate before I could walk. My mom got me into, my mom's from Michigan. My dad is from New York. And they ended up moving to Texas at that time. And I was born in Houston, but my family on my mom's side were hockey players. And my mom put me in skating lessons at like 3 years old or like some crazy young age. And I'm like skating and like learning how to walk. And so I've played hockey since I was like 4 or 5 years old. And that's what I wanted to do my entire life. I knew nothing else. And, you know, my dad comes from a very like blue collar, like hardworking family, like very hardworking family from like Long Island, New York. And so he instilled like crazy work ethic in me. And like, you have to work hard to get where you want to be. And so all I wanted to be, I was a goalie in hockey. So all I wanted to play in the NHL. That's all I wanted to do my entire life as a kid. So I took it upon myself to like train. And like I had a couple buddies of mine that from Texas that ended up like going really far in hockey as well. And like even way farther than me. And like, we always trained anytime in the summer we were at home. So when we all left, we all moved away from home around the same time. And we'd come back in the summer and we would train all day in the summer. We'd be on the ice, we'd be in the gym, we'd be doing like strength and conditioning with our trainers. And it was like a full life commitment at an early age. And so that was kind of just my mental understanding of like how things kind of worked. Like if you wanted something, you have to work this hard to get it. Like, and I didn't grow up
process.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I still love it. And I think, but it's like a double-edged sword. So, you know, by isolating yourself so much at a young age to only your team and only being away from home and everything is work, you take yourself away from your family, your friends at an early age. I became very, very detached. And I don't want to say, I felt like I maybe became almost unempathetic at an early age. And I've learned a lot since then, obviously now, but I became almost so independent at a young age, not financially. My parents, thank God, like I was 14,
right.
They helped me out, you know, I was that age, but I almost felt like I was kind of just like this, not an outsider, but I always felt kind of detached from like the family life and like the normal typical, the normal typical like American like American kid upbringing.
I mean, you're not going to high school dances, right?
No, I was always gone. Even before I was even before I left home, my entire life was to work up to playing in the NHL. So I went to 4 different high schools, played in different areas around the country. And then at 18, after graduating high school, I went and instead of going to college, I went and played hockey in Canada for like 2 years in Vancouver. And like that being another stepping stone to becoming like a big pro.
Right.
And that was at that time, the pressure, that's another thing, like the politics and the pressure of sports at that caliber at a young age was so high that it was really like beyond mentally draining. And I got introduced to that type of pressure at a really young age.
Right.
Like you hear a lot of athletic stories of people and like, especially like gymnasts and Olympics and like things like the pressure. You always hear about like these kids having to grow up at like 14. It was the same thing. Like I kind of had to like man up and grow up at like a really young age. And sometimes my my adult figures at a young age were my coaches.
Right.
And they're very detached from like, it's not the same type of discipline as like a family. So, I mean, like everything was hard work and, discipline and at a young age. And so that's the only way
they're trying to mold you into a
dude. And so that was like a robot at a young age. Like mentally, I was very in my own head as a hockey player too, as a goalie. Like I had all these rituals, all these crazy things I did.
Oh yeah. I didn't even think about that. Even on the team, you're isolated, right? In a way.
Yeah. And it kind of relates to the music now, but it's kind of where I've started to kind of correlate the two as I've gotten older. But so I'm, all the way up until I was 19. And I decided when I turned 19, I was living in Canada and I had got traded a few times. And I just knew at that point, I finally could come to terms. By that time I started to fall out of love with playing hockey. I didn't love it anymore. I was so kind of beaten down from the politics and the mental drain of it. And I've been doing it since I was like 3 years old. So literally my entire life, I only knew one thing and one thing only.
Wild.
And I played sports at like 7, 8, 9 other sports, soccer, baseball, basketball and whatnot. But like hockey was the thing. And all I did, I lived, breathed, did that and that only my entire life. So I didn't know how to do anything else at a young age. And so I decided to quit. Like to not come back at 19.
That must have been a terrifying decision
to
make,
man. It was
definitely
one of the most heartbreaking at the time. Crazy, like saddest. I felt like my life was over at that time. I didn't know what else to do at that point. Like I only knew this and I had this one skill. And so I decided to move back home from Canada after the season was over. I didn't quit the team or anything, but like the season was done. I was like, I'm not going to come back. And then my dad's like, well, my parents have been very side note, my parents were always extremely supportive of my endeavors in sports because I was such a hard worker. They knew like, all right, if he really wants to do something, he's going to do it. So we'll support him because he's going to work to do it. Yeah. He's going to put the work in. And so I came home and they were really supportive of my decisions, but I was like heartbroken. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, I don't even know where my life is going. Like, am I like going to be home? I thought all of the worst possibilities.
Of course.
And the thing is, I forgoed going to college. So all the kids that were my age were already in school. So and I'm like, wait, do I go to college now? I'm behind. Like, so I decided at the time, I still loved strength and conditioning and training at that point. I'm like, all right, I'll go to college at Texas Tech. I'm behind, but it's cool. Everyone is different ages in college classes. I started telling myself, that's cool. Let's go to college, figure it out, see what I want to do. So I go to college, and all along this time, I still love dance music, and I still, I start kind of learning how to produce on the side for fun. I have no idea about anything production wise.
Right.
I'm like watching YouTube videos. I'm like taking Skype classes with random people, and I'm like, I still have it, which is crazy. I'm going to find it one day. My summer before school, before I moved to Texas Tech, I was interning at this gym, the strength and conditioning gym, and I was running the front desk outside of my learning of being a strength and conditioning coach.
Right.
So I had to run the front desk to like make some money. I would, in my free time, because it wasn't a very busy gym, I was so intrigued with music producing. I'd go on the internet. I had a binder I still have it. This binder, the first half of my binder is all workouts and different workout plans and eating plans and nutritional plans that I was learning. And then in my free time behind the desk, I would go to like Google and I would search like what EQ meant and what compression meant and what all these things meant. So if you look and go through this binder, it's workouts, right. Nutrition, hockey stuff. And then it hits this empty page. And then behind it, it's just definitions of music production. And it's like different links and different goals and things like I need to learn like what compression means and like what all these words and all these different definitions. Cause I had no idea anything. So I didn't even know where to start with music. I was like, I don't really know what the first thing to do. I know I need to have a DAW at the time, a DAW. I'm like, that's something.
Yeah.
I need that. Ableton, Logic. Everyone likes Ableton. All right, cool. So I have all these different, it's the craziest binder, dude. And so that's where I'm like starting to kind of like find a passion, like a hobby passion for it at the time. And then when I turned 18, so I think this was like, so actually going back a year, I went to my first music festival ever at 18 with my hockey buddies right before my last year of hockey.
Sure.
And we went to Lollapalooza in 2018. And this is like when the Perry stage was like a tent, small tent.
2008, you mean?
No. Oh yeah. Sorry. It's not 18.
Wait, that's crazy. If it was actually 2008,
or 9, or no, not 2008. It was the year that Skrillex. So it was the year Eminem played, Muse played, and Pretty Lights and like played.
Okay.
Don't remember what year it was. I think it was 2010.
Yeah, something 11. Like that. Because
it was 2010.
It's a crazy. I was about to freak out because the very first year that they did Perry's stage at Lolla, it was like just a little tent, like, you know, it looked like a tent you'd have at like a barbecue. And I played it along with Floss and a few other people. DJ AM headlined it. But yeah, man, there was like especially Lollapalooza. I'm biased because I was living in Chicago at the time.
It's my favorite. Like, it's one of my favorite festivals.
Oh my God, man. The vibe there, for you to go there for the first time, kind of as all of that was really like exploding, that must have been really exciting.
Oh, yeah. So that was my first introduction to a music festival in general. And I was really starting to love electronic. That's when I was like, I love Skrillex. I loved Afrojack at the time. I loved Pretty Lights. I loved Girl Talk was playing that year. And so I go with my hockey buddies and I am like the shirtless bro. I'm drunk and I lose all my friends. I go to the front of the Perry's tent and I stay there all day. And I watch by myself. I have no one around me. I love this. Like, I love this more than just music. I want to do this. It's not that I want to DJ and be that guy. It's like this like call and response of like music and the response of the energy of a crowd. I was like, so yeah, that was the year that like I took it from like, I'm a fan, I'll go to these shows to like, all right, I'm going to like invest a little bit of time into understanding what this even is. And then fast forward to me about to go to college. I'm like, I buy like an APC 40. I don't even know why I bought it. I thought it was something I needed for production.
Right.
I saw Maddie on use it in that video and I was like, oh, I need this. It's going to help me with my production. Returned it like the next day for like something more important, like Ableton.
Right.
And I like go to college for my first semester and I'm like, I got Tractor downloaded on my computer. It's my first semester of college. And like, I start to realize I just like college in the sense of like the traditional way of learning. And I'm like, this is not for me. I'm not really learning anything about like what I really want to do with my strength and conditioning degree. Cause that's what I was going to go to school for. And I'm like, I already know all this. Like, I'm wasting my time here in a sense. And like, I feel like no motivation to be here. But then while in my free time in my dorm, I would like be trying to learn how to make music and watching YouTube tutorials and like going on different blogs. And then I would be going to like parties and DJing on my laptop on Tractor. I just crossing the fader over on my trackpad and everyone was loving it. Like this, I'm like, this is so cool. Like, and that's how I got like, it was like, Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, like midterms, I'm at a Starbucks and like this kid I went to high school one year, my senior year, he ended up being one of the first kids ever to go to Icon.
Okay.
Collective, the production squad. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, they get a lot of free advertising on this.
Right. Yeah. So I won't get too much into it. He posted about graduating there, and I'm like,
I was just joking. We could talk about them all day.
No. But no, we could talk all day about it. But I know there's a lot to talk about. So like that's kind of I saw him like graduate. I'm like, oh, there's production school. It's crazy. Like. And I talked to him a little bit on like Facebook DM and he like gave me the number to the admissions and I'm like studying for finals. And I ended up calling the school. I'm like, I'm just going to call the guy and get some information. I ended up talking to the dude at like Starbucks for like 3.5 hours on the phone. I call my mom. I'm like, I want to quit college and I want to go to school for music. And they're like, my parents were divorced. And so I call my mom first.
Yeah.
And I like tell her all this in confidence. I'm like, okay, what do you think of this? I want to tell dad this. Cause my dad was like the one that was like financially supporting me for college and like all that. And he's like,
well, and if he's the one who, you were saying like he instilled this crazy work ethic and all that, probably he didn't want to hear that his son was going to be a DJ.
Yeah. So I'm like, how do I go about this? Like, I need to like let them know I don't want to be at school anymore, but I want to move to LA and like, I want to go to school. So I got like a week to prepare to tell my parents when I go home to Houston. I end up making this like crazy PowerPoint presentation of like how I'm going to move to LA and go to school, but I like worked around like not being a DJ. I'm like, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to work at a studio. There's real job opportunities here. Yeah. So I write this crazy PowerPoint and I like do handouts for my mom, my stepmom, and my dad, like handouts that followed the PowerPoint because I'm a college student at the time. So I'm like savvy. Yeah. I'm savvy with PowerPoint at the time. Last time I probably ever used it. Right. Of course. And I write all this big presentation. I sit them down like intervention style at Thanksgiving break. And I'm like, I want to do this. And they're like super impressed. Like if I would have come about it any other way, like, hey, I want to be a DJ. Like, check this link out. Like, this is cool. Look at what I could do.
Here's my SoundCloud, Mom. Yeah, look at Skrillex.
Like, that's what I could do if I just go to school for like 9 months. Like, And they're like, I didn't even know you liked music like this. And I'm like, so I got to come about this like seriously in the right way. And because I did that, and my dad knows my work ethic. He knows when I want to like put time into something, I'm going to make it happen. He goes, okay. He goes, well, first I made a joke. He's like, well, it's a lot cheaper than school, so you're going to save me a lot of money. And he's like, if you really want to do this, you can either finish the year, or you can go back and finish your first semester and then unenroll. And I was like, I'm going to unenroll.
Yeah.
And so the day after Christmas, I packed up my car, my old Tahoe at the time, with everything I owned, and drove to California on my own.
Man,
and that's kind of how Kayzo started. Like that's how the journey of music started for me, dude.
I mean, that must have been a crazy feeling, man, setting off on your own like that.
I was super excited, but also super nerve-wracking because it's something. So my whole life, you got to understand, like I was good at one thing. Like I put all of my time. I mean, I was good at a lot of things, but like I put all of my time and effort to playing hockey. I never had to like kind of relearn something or learn something for the first time. I was always good at this one thing. I didn't really know how to be uncomfortable and like have to like, I didn't know how to be the guy that was like, say, I don't know how to do this, or I don't understand what this even means. So yeah, it was very, very daunting at the start to like be this guy who had no idea about anything about music production and the ins and outs of this. And then, but that was, if I didn't do that, man, I don't know where I would be right now with. Probably be back in Texas still, honestly. And this would be a whole different, we wouldn't be talking, but
100%, man.
Yeah, dude, it's just crazy. That was 8 years ago. I didn't even know how to download Ableton.
Right. And so now it's become, it's like a second. I mean, I think this is actually a theme that I think is running through this whole conversation, is that when you commit, you really commit, whether it's hockey, whether it's music, whether it's even the songwriting stuff we were talking about before, where, I think that's part of what has led you to the sound you have and what people know you for, is that you went so far down this hole and you really immersed yourself in it rather than, kind of just playing with it for a little bit and moving on.
It may have not been like the sexiest sound at the time, or like it wasn't like the trend, right? But I was like, I love this, and I'm gonna go all in on this, and whatever comes out of it sound wise is what I'm gonna be happy doing wherever it gets me in my career. And I think when artists are honest like that, I think we're at a time now where fans are more educated, I think, than they've ever been with dance music, especially, and they're more. I think that the fact that there's less and less of a line between artists to fans, that fans know more and more than they've ever known about us. And so they're really smart. And I think they've kind of a lot of them have dug past the BS, and they're like, we want real authentic, not just music, but authentic people that are genuine and like creative souls that are in this for the right reason. And
well, that's one thing, man, that I think this time period right now is doing too, is that
it really is.
Both you and I know, I'm not trying to call anyone out, but there are artists where it's really just a brand. And if you like poke into it too much, there's not that much behind it. Mm-hmm. And in this time when you can't be out on the road, you can't sort of justify that brand. I think a lot of people, I think it's harder for an artist like that where, because people at this point, it's like, well, I don't want to just, see an inspirational quote and a cool picture. People are looking for something more than that.
Yeah. It's kind of goes back to like the time when I quit hockey and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do the rest of my life. It's all over. It's like, I think some people, I hope not many are feeling this way, but now that you've taken the show aspect out of this for the time being, not forever, but like you've stripped that financial support and you stripped that whole entire highlight of this industry out of it, the fun, or I guess a lot of people consider it the fun part, even though the music writing for me is the fun part. That is why people are probably freaking out. Like, what's next? And it's scary because I know there's so many good up and coming artists that were just starting to like gain a lot of traction. And it's like, I can't even imagine, like, I'm very fortunate to be where I am now in terms of my life and my career, and to be able to take this time, not stress and be like, where am I going to be in a year? But I do feel, and that's why, like, when it comes down to like me helping younger artists and developing younger artists, that's another reason why I developed like Welcome Records, my record label, was to like give a home and give an outlet for people like myself. I felt like I didn't really fit at any record label or any sound growing when I started releasing music. And I never really wanted to at the same time. I never really wanted to be like the guy that was always on the one label that made the one sound. Like, I wanted to be on everything. So that's what kind of Welcome is kind of, it's about anything, and there's no stigma to it. And so I've really wanted to take this time and like help out a bunch of up and coming artists. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Some cool people, man. It's I was stoked you linked up with Hellbound, who's my homie.
Oh, he's awesome.
He's so
Vince
good.
Is awesome.
Man. And you've been working with people like G-Buck, who's long time.
Dude, I love Greg, man.
Yeah.
Man. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I think there's just these, like, not everyone fits into like one sound or one style. And there's not always a home for one sound or for these guys. And like, especially like, there's guys like Hellbound who are like, they may make one sound of music, but their brand is just so open, like so cool. And so like, it's not like, he's not like just a techno artist now. He's got like a really cool aura about his brand and who he is and the way. And also he works. And I like people, honestly, like, to be completely honest, like, I love working with people that work as hard or harder than me. And that dude works really hard.
Oh, he works
He's always
hard.
Working on music.
Crazy.
And I'm really big about work ethic. Like, when I collab with people, sometimes it's really rare for me to be outworked.
Right.
And like, but there's guys that are like on top of it even more than I am. And I'm like, those are the guys that like, I want to help. I really want to, like, there's guys like Calcium, there's guys like Hellbound, there's Reaper, there's Sin. There's so many guys that are like on the rise right now that work so fucking hard. And this whole pandemic kind of just like
it's tough.
Took a huge variable out of the way for those guys that are like seeing the light, starting to see the first couple doors open for them.
Yeah.
And
I was just talking to my manager the other day about people in that position, and it's because right now there's kind of no one who's changing levels, if you know what I mean. Like, there's no one who's like catching a giant buzz and really, getting to whatever that next level is, partially because there's no shows. And I think people's
how do you even perceive that right now?
Right.
It's kind of hard
people's
to even
attention is all over the place. But what I will say for any artists who are feeling that frustration and in that position is that your spot's still going to be there, and so everybody's slowed down. So it's not like anyone's passing you.
I definitely think it's important for, people like myself or other artists that are on a bigger platform to really take this time, though, to acknowledge those up and coming artists that are working. Cause I remember, like, that's kind of where I got where I was. I was able to get my music and get support from bigger artists like Adventure Club or Carnage or DJ Snake or just any of these guys. Like, they either played my records out or just supported me as an artist, or put me on their bus tours or whatever. It's like, I think it's really important for us who are able to take this time and like be like, okay, we'll be okay, but let's continue to work hard. But we don't have to like fear for, are we going to be here in a year? Like, I think it's important for us to really like take these guys under our wings and like really support them and put their name out there, because there's a lot of really, really good up and coming young, especially really young artists. And I'm surprised some of these guys are so young. I'm like, dude, if I was your age making music, I started when I was like 20.
Yeah.
And I'm 28 now. It's like, if I was 16, 15 making music, it'd be a whole different, it'd be crazy. It's so different. But
I had More Kismet on the show the other day.
Oh, he's awesome.
So he's fucking 15 years old.
So
it's crazy.
His new EP that just came out, it's so rad.
I
just listened to it, and and that's the thing. It's a beautiful thing to see, like, kids that age, that are almost half of the normal age in the industry, like, killing it right now. And I think it's important that we don't let those names go unnoticed.
Dude, it's all about a support system. And I love hearing you say that, because that's what we all need. It's what I needed when I was a young artist. And even for you, I think about, I mean, you guys sort of turned it into a whole thing, but you and OK and .com, like, for a while there, it really felt like, from an outsider's perspective, that you guys were a support system for each other, and that you were sort of going through similar milestones at similar times. And I have to imagine that must have been really nice, just to be able to have friends who you could actually talk to and understand what you're going through.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, those guys, those guys in Yultron, and even the guys I went to Icon with, because I went at a very interesting time. I went at the same time as me, Jaws, Nightmare, Slander, Sullivan King, Protohype, Mac J. I think Company wasn't there too far after. Yultron was there,
man.
And like, even dating back to just the guys I went at the same time, like me, Jaws, Nightmare, Slander, whatever. Like, that was even a support system at a time, because like, we all went, and Icon at that time, there was really no one that we could like look up to. Like, I want to go to Icon, I want to make music, because these guys went to the school, and that, me plus this school equals EDC or playing these shows, right? It's like, we didn't have that. So we're like, we go there and we're like, we just want to make music. We all meet each other for the first time. None of us know who we are. Like, none of us know where this is going to go. And we all become really close friends just from the love of making music and the technical and creative aspect of it. And so it's been a really, really, really rewarding and gratifying feeling to be 8 years later from Icon, and we're all still seeing each other play on these festivals. We're running into each other. We're supporting each other musically or on shows. And that's one of the craziest things, is we'll be in like Asia, China or somewhere, and I'm playing a festival with like Slander, Derek and Scott. I'm like, what is this? It's so crazy, dude. Remember we were in Burbank in that studio. We didn't know how to make music. And like, now we're in fucking playing EDC Japan or something. And I'm like, what is happening? This is so wild. And we've known each other. We've all known each other since the start. And like you said, it's about having a strong support system. And I think I've been very lucky to have the group of guys that we all kind of rose at a certain time together. I'm very lucky to have those guys, because we saw each other in like the beginning infancy stages of our careers and our understanding of music.
And through the tough times, right? Because at the start, it's not like everyone's succeeding. At the start, it's probably not everybody's got money. Like,
it's different for everyone, 100%. And but we all bonded over music, and we all, regardless of where we were or whatever age we were or whatever part of life we were in, we all came together and made music together and had no idea what we were going to do, but we all just loved doing it together, and we all support each other. None of us, we never that's what was so great about that time, was like, no one hid secrets from each other. No one was like, well, I'm going to do my thing, and like, yeah, I'll hear your thing later. It was like, we all literally just like did everything together, shared every insider secret of production. And like, it was all just about sharing. Yeah. And it was just, and I think that's why you see all of us kind of together, doing it together at the same time. We just all were in it for the right reasons. And I think you're starting to see like a really good young group of people, like More Kismet and other guys like that. Like, I think in it for the right exact, it's like, it's kind of weird. It's like being where we are now, I see those guys and it's like, that's where we were at the beginning of our careers. And it's so cool to see those kids crushing it and being in it for all of those right reasons.
Yeah, and lifting up their friends and talking about artists they're excited about. And, I think that's what it's all about, man. It comes back to the community at the end of the day. And, it's like, if you look at, you and Abe, OK, and Jaws and, all these people, everybody ended up kind of in their own lane, sort of organically, And I love that, because then it's an example of how this really, even though you're taught to think of this as a competition, there's no competition at all, right?
It's surprising. Like, I think, obviously there is a business aspect to this. And I know artists like to, sometimes I feel like artists like to ignore that fact, but I think also the strongest artists are also the strongest businessmen at the same time. Like, you don't have to be one or the other. Like, you can be both. There's enough time in the day. Like, I'm the type of guy I'm all in with my manager and my agents and my team and whoever, my creative. Like, I don't stray away and take myself out of the equation on any aspect of Kayzo. I love doing it all.
Yeah.
I love being involved in it all. And I think that is an important quality that I think it's something a lot of young producers should know, is like, it's not all about the innocence of just making music. Like, that is the most important thing for me still, is making music and being creative. But do not forget the fact that this is still a business, and do not become negligent to that, to where you get used and you get stomped over, because it's very easy to just block that whole nasty part out and be like, well, I'm just going to make music and good music will flourish. It will. But when it starts flourishing is the issue. Is like, people start to take advantage of you and use you. And so I think it is important to be a very well-rounded artist, businessman, or businesswoman, whatever it may be. Like, be aware of everything that's going on. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, everyone is going to be out for themselves. So you have to take care of yourself in all aspects of this industry.
100%.
I think that's something a lot of people don't like to look at an early age.
Yeah.
Or early part of their career.
Well, because when you're young and just starting out, anybody who wants to do anything for you is exciting, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's so easy to get caught up with, the wrong people, or just not someone who's not going to help you that much, just because you feel like, oh, finally somebody's paying attention, Yeah.
And that's the time where it's time, I think, to be most involved, is when things are happening at that rapidly. Because when things start to hit right, it's like everyone knows it's a snowball effect. Things get big really quick, and sometimes it's really easy to lose sight of that. This is your business, and this is your livelihood, if you want it to be at the same time. And we're all very lucky to be able to do this for a living, but it is important to remember it is a livelihood, and it's important to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and
it's all angles of this business.
Oh, dude, and it's okay to ask questions too. I think it goes back to the support system.
I think that's something people don't do enough of.
Yeah, I completely
on that
agree.
On that side, I think there needs to be more business management, and I don't mean for business managers talking to artists or managers talking. I think it's important for all other artists to kind of share that, their experiences and their understanding of the business side, because we all are here because we understand the creative side. We all can make music to a certain extent, but not everyone has the personality to get gritty and get a little dirty and understand the business side. And that is the side that will eat you whole if you just if you neglect it. If you completely just shove it under the rug, I'll let other people handle it. Yeah, they'll handle it, but you have to be aware of everything that goes on.
Yeah. Well, and it's about you just reminded me of you watching tutorials and not knowing what compression meant or what EQ meant. At a certain point, you can't be afraid of diving into something you don't know.
Exactly. Even though it's scary, it may be daunting, and I think it is. I think especially now, just seeing the way that the entertainment industry works from all these different facets, like social media and business and the creative. It's I think some people are just scared to dive into certain things.
Yeah.
And because they're afraid of what they're going to find, or what the hard work will come out of it. And I think it's important to just be open-minded and willing to work, and just I think at the end of the day, take care of yourself as much as you can, because
what you're talking about is just, people are afraid of this kind of stuff, which is understandable, but
it's scary. Yeah, for sure.
But obviously, if the more decisions you make motivated by fear, the more that's going to add up in the end, man, to something you don't want.
100%.
Yo, this has been great, man. I really like talking to you. I don't want to take up your whole day. Yeah, no, it's great to catch up, man. It's been a minute.
It's been a while. I think last time I saw you was you were doing the podcast for Cheney.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were at my place when I was living in San Diego.
And that's why I thought you were still there.
Of course. Yeah. Well, it wasn't even that long ago, man. It's crazy.
But it feels like forever ago.
I know.
Man. Time flies.
Do you remember? I still have a memory of that, actually, because I did the podcast with Cheney, and then you guys were leaving, and right as you left, there was like a crazy torrential downpour that started,
like random rain, like a monsoon just came through.
Like minute. Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you guys were just stuck on my porch for a while.
Yeah, that was fun, man. Good times.
That was good, man. No, and it was it was nice to have you there. That whole thing was fun.
I'm glad we could finally take some time and do this.
Me too, cool. Man. I mean, you and I don't know each other that well, but I've always thought of you fondly. I don't know.
Thank you.
I just had a memory actually when we confirmed that we were going to talk, and you probably don't even remember this. This was years ago. I don't remember where it was. It was in some green room, some backstage, some festival somewhere. I don't even remember. And I was there, and you were there, and I think Abe was there, and I think .com, and maybe a few other people. And I was talking to Abe because I had known him, I think, a little longer than I had known some of you, the rest of you guys. Mm-hmm. And I'd never met you. And you just came up to me and you're like, hey, man, and these aren't your exact words. I've half forgotten it, but something like, just like, hey, man, like I saw you, talking to my friends. I figured like any friends of my friends are probably cool people. And just like, it was like a really nice thing that you didn't have to do. And you were just like, hey, nice to meet you, man. And I just remember that. I was like, what a sweet guy, man. That really made my night.
Sweet guy. No, thanks, man. I appreciate. I mean, that's another thing. Like, I think people are just too cool nowadays at these festivals. As you're back, everyone talks to each other. It's
that's
like
true.
Same clicky thing. I'm like, yo, just go introduce yourself to someone. I think that's a lost skill. That's a lost skill. A lost skill of a different age, like going up and introducing yourself in person. Now it's like, I know that person. I'll just DM them.
Right.
You're like behind the safety of my iPhone.
Yeah. Everybody needs that like layer of distance.
That security blanket of the internet to talk to someone. But in reality, I'm telling you, my most long-lasting relations in this industry are the ones that I've met face to face, just going up and saying hi to you.
Oh, 100%, man. And there's always, you get a perception of somebody on social media and you can like build up this image of who they are. And at least for me, that can cause anxiety of like, oh, what if, how are we going to interact? What's this going to be? And then the second you actually have a human interaction, all that is gone,
We need more of that, more now than ever, man. So I think that's really good. You're doing these podcasts with these artists, getting a chance to kind of have a conversation with us as humans and artists, but from a human interaction, a human level, breaking it all down. It's important.
Where are you at with social media these days?
I've kind of just taken the, over the years, I've just kind of, I know it's important to have, obviously, and I do keep up with it. But I've kind of realized that the more impactful content that I put out there is stuff that like, I don't want to just say something or post something that I know is just going to, and I know my manager and everyone will be like, well, no, you need to do this. But I hate posting stuff because I feel like I have to for like, this will get a lot of likes or this will boost your engagement if you post this relatable thing. It's like, I just I like deleted all of my tweets and I have archived all my Instagram posts before this EP. I just kind of want to, from here on out for the rest of this year, especially, I just want to just put content out there that I think is impactful and it tells my story and it's something that can help other people, whether it's music content or even things I want to say. I don't have a lot to say on the internet right now. Yeah. I don't know why. I think there's just too much being said on the internet right now that it's kind of drawn me away from wanting to say anything and not say anything because I'm afraid to speak up and say things. Just like, I just have really liked I'm still on my phone a lot, but I feel like the past years before this, I've just been always on my phone, having to tweet something or having to feel like I had to post a photo or take a video. And I just want to like take this time and enjoy my dog, my girlfriend, my new place, my music, and have these types of meaningful human interactions and these types of interviews versus having to like just say something to say something.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, man.
Yeah. That's the thing, people. If you don't have anything to say, it's not a bad time. Not a bad thing to not say anything and worry about things that actually matter in your life.
Real life, man. Real
life is great out there. So I'm trying to, I think us DJs or artists in general are just trying to enjoy a little bit more real life right now.
Yeah.
Something we don't get much of. And so I'm just really trying to soak it in.
Dude, I'm glad you're getting that time, man. That makes me happy to hear.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll wrap it up just by asking you one last question. It's the question I ask at the end of each one of these episodes. Just looking for a time in your life, a memory, could be from any time, when in a single moment, music really meant something to you, really had a deep impact on you. And that's meant to be like a super broad question. You can kind of just whatever comes to mind.
No, that's a great question. I think the obvious answer for me is the one that I already kind of told you, the Lollapalooza. That was like a very impactful moment for me. But I would say, I think another full circle moment, it was probably the time that I played Lollapalooza. And that was in 2018, I played it Perry stage. And I think, and it wasn't just like, I made it. It was just like, I had a moment, I went to sound check that day and I was standing there and I was just I remembered a lot of just it was a lot of overwhelming emotion of just uncertainty I had with music prior to learning how to, all the stuff I told you, just the crazy story of hockey to music and not knowing anything about music. And Lolla just holds it just holds a more of a deeper impact to me.
Yeah.
It's the place that sparked my intrigue of making music. And then it's a place where I got to share my music with people. And so I know it's a cheesy full circle moment, but it was just I don't know, something
Dude,
about
that's not cheesy at all.
Something about that was just it's a testament to literally, if you don't have to be from a crazy musical background, you don't have to be from any sort of preconceived background or come from any sort of money or any sort of class to either do whatever you want to do. If you just do it, and now we're at a time in our world where everything is at your fingertips. All the knowledge is there. All the information is there. It's just it's hard work and it's passion and dedication to just make things happen. And I think it's important to recognize all that hard work that you put into making things happen. So that was a very important moment, man.
100%. 100%. I mean, and to be able to be in the moment and to recognize it, right? Because so much I think so much of our lives is we look at it in the rear view, right? Because at the time it's hard to be in the moment. It's hard to appreciate it as it's happening because you always got to go do the next thing. And so hearing that you're able to kind of have that moment, man, that's beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I really I appreciate you. Thank you for doing this, man.
Yeah, man. Let's do it again sometime.
Dude, I'm down anytime. Maybe maybe we'll do it in person, And
I was going to say maybe in person. That would be who would have thought that'd be such a strange concept.
2025, baby. I'll see you then.
I'll see you next century.
Yo, thank you, man. This has been really fun.
Yeah, dude. Likewise. I'll talk to you soon. I can't wait to see you again.
Absolutely, man. Later. Take care, buddy.
Brother. Have a good one, bro.
You too.
Peace.
All right, that's the show. Shout out to Kayzo. Great to have you on, man. For everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Don't forget, The Year the World Stood Still, the new EP from Kayzo, is out this Friday, September 25th. There's going to be a link in the description of this episode where you can go follow Kayzo, grab the new music, and keep up to date with him. There's also going to be links where you can go follow me, holler at your boy, and also come join the Back-to-Back Discord. Come hop in the server. Come say what's up. I will be there to welcome you. We would love to have you over there. My name is Willy Joy. That's going to about do it for this week. Much love to everybody out there supporting this show week after week, letting people know they should be tuning in, putting up posts, tagging us. I'm at Willy Joy or at Back-to-Back-Pod. You can also reach out to me directly. backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address. I think we're done here. I think we did a pretty good job, gang. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're feeling good. I hope you're finding some fun one way or another in this crazy time in the world. I hope you're registered to vote. If you're not, you got to get on that. There's a link in the description of this episode as well, where you can go get a lot more information about registering to vote. But beyond any of that, I just want you guys out there to have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the people around you. Go out there, kill it at whatever you are trying to accomplish, and we will check back in next Tuesday. I love you guys. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.